Hey everybody, welcome back to the next part in my dialing in series for our Line 6 Helix. And today I am taking a look at an effect that maybe some folks might think, why would we need to talk about dialing it in? And that is the simple delay on the Helix. Some folks have questioned, what is the point of the simple delay? We have so many other wonderful delays on the Helix that sometimes a simple delay might just be overlooked and not really used. But is there a purpose for it? Well, let's dive into it a little bit deeper and find out. So here we are over in HX Edit, and you'll see I have my little template set up here. I decided just to pick a Tweed Blues Norm amp. I recently released a preset on the Line 6 Marketplace featuring this amp. I really love this amp. It's a great sounding amp. If you want to go check out that preset, I'll put the link in the description below. But I just kind of messed with the settings a little bit to get a tone I liked. I fed it into my normal little chain that I have here, and I've added a simple delay. Now, a lot of folks that follow my channel know that I really do like the transistor tape, but for this episode, I wanted to really focus on the simple delay, which is a delay, like I said, that some folks sometimes overlook. So what is the difference between the simple delay and the other vast array of delays we have available in the Helix? Well, the other delays are mostly designed to alter our delayed repeats in some fashion. Some examples of that, right? The transistor tape that I love so much is designed to give the echoed repeats the sound of being played through a tape machine. We have things such as the vintage digital, which gives us different parameters such as the bit depth so that we can kind of change the echo repeats to be not quite so pristine. We have things like the mod chorus echo, even in the transistor tape, the ability to add wow and flutter to the tape machine. We have things like the bucket brigade, which is like an analog delay, which kind of degrades the signal quality of those delayed repeats that we send through them. And on it goes. The elephant man, where we add other modulation to those delayed repeats. So the simple delay is designed to simply sound like basically what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. So if we have a situation where we have a very pristine sound or a sound that we do not want altered in any way, we don't want the sound degraded at all, we don't want modulation added to it, we don't want any pitch effects added to it, we can just pick the simple delay, and basically what we put into it, we're going to get that same tone out of it for our delayed echoed repeats. And I'll give you some examples in comparison to other delays in just a moment. So what do we have first and foremost though? We have the note sync or the time. So we can either set this in milliseconds or we can set it to a note value that would be tied to this tempo up here in the top right hand corner. By far my favorite way to use any delay is almost always to set it to a note sync, just because I like it to usually be in time with the music that I'm playing to, and whether I tap tempo that in or set that tempo beforehand depends on the situation. So basically the note sync is going to tell us how long it's going to be before we get our echo, right? In the left side of the speaker in a stereo delay. Okay, and you might be questioning why I say in the left side of the speaker, and we'll talk about that in a minute when we come down to our scale parameter. So we can either set this in milliseconds so that if I play this, and I'm just going to set my scale to 100% for now, I know that if I play this, I'm going to get my first repeat 800 milliseconds later. If I change this over to note sync, then I'm going to get my first repeat a quarter note later at 120 beats per minute, which would be equivalent to 500 milliseconds. The feedback is going to tell us how many delayed repeats we get. So if we put this on 0, basically at 1 repeat. If we put this at 50%, we hear the repeats go on further. And if we put that to 100%, those delays just keep going and going. The mix control is going to tell us how much of the direct signal is going to be mixed in with the delayed repeat. So if we have that on 0, it's like having the delay off. If we have it on 100%, we're not going to have any direct signal. You'll see as my hand picks, you hear nothing, but you hear the delayed note after the fact. If we put that at 50%, the direct signal and the repeated note should be pretty close to equal. The level is just going to be the final output level of our delay. So we can crank that up if we need more output signal coming out of that, feeding into whatever the next block or effect is. Notice I said the note sync controls how long it's going to take before we get a delayed repeat in our left speaker. Because what the scale controls is what's going to happen in our right speaker. So if we have this at 100%, we basically get the effect of the exact same note coming out of both speakers, which gives us the impression of it being right down the middle. But if I change this to 50%, what it's telling us now is what's going to happen in the right speaker. The note sync, or the number of milliseconds I set on my time parameter, is going to be 50% of what is set up here. So the quarter note would now be an eighth note. So what we're going to get is an eighth note in the right speaker followed by that quarter note in the left speaker. We can set that at various places to get different kind of rhythmic feels of the echoed notes bouncing around in the stereo field. And we could also use that with a higher feedback. Right? And we can play around with that to get some really interesting effects. And with it at 0, we simply get what's coming out of our left speaker. At 100%, we get that coming out of both sides. So I'm going to leave that at 100% for now. Our trails on would mean that when we, let's say, switch snapshots, any effect, any notes that are still continuing won't get chopped off. So we'll leave that on as well. So what might be some of the uses for the simple delay? Well, you know, something where we have maybe a nice, clean, pristine sound. Where we don't want anything to change, just sort of what we put in is what we get out. It would be the perfect choice for that. You know, something like the mod chorus echo. And let me go through a few of the other options here. What you'll hear right away, just on the stock settings, you hear how the delayed repeats, and let me just bring the mix up here, are being affected with modulation, right? Something like a vintage digital. We can take and play with the sample rate and the bit depth. Hear how much darker the repeats have gotten. And we introduce some digital distortion into it as it's designed. Something like the transistor tape, right? We can put the wow and flutter up with a lot of spread. And we hear that warble put onto the echoes, something like the Bucket Brigade. You can hear how dark that sounds. We can add noise to it. You see all these other parameters. It's definitely not giving us back what we put into it. The Elephant Man, we're going to have either chorus or vibrato modulation on it. So if we now go back to the simple delay, we hear how pristine this is. There's none of those parameters that we can adjust to kind of alter what's coming back out of it. It's basically, like I said before, what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. One really good example of a time we might want to use this is, you know, let's say something like the odd time where we might want to do a special effect, like using a dotted eighth note, let's say, with our feedback on 0, our mix around 50%, and we'll put our scale up to 100 to get these kind of effects. Those kind of cascading, bouncing effects where we want both the direct note and the echo to be the same tone and the same volume. So that'd be a very cool use, and that would probably be my go-to for that particular situation. But really, now that we understand what all the parameters do, and I know a lot of you folks probably already did understand a lot of those. If you didn't, then wonderful. I hope you pick up something new that you can use in your presets. But anytime we just basically want to have sort of what we put in be what comes back out, right? So if I have that set to a quarter note, kind of a more typical situation here maybe. I would say most situations out there, I really do like to have the ability to have a little bit of character on my repeated notes to differentiate them from my direct notes. Maybe to have them sit a little further back in the mix, we darken them up a bit, or we add some modulation just to give them some character. And there's obviously a lot of other choices in the Helix to do that, like I gave with some of the examples I quickly passed through. But if we are just looking for what it's called a simple delay, where what we put in we want to come back out, that would be your choice. So what do you guys think? I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope that maybe opened somebody's eyes to the fact that we do have that simple delay if we do need that situation covered, where we just want a very basic delay, easy to dial in. We now understand what those parameters do, and we now know that if we need basically the exact same tone that we're putting into the delay to come back out of it, that might be your prime candidate to accomplish that. But if we don't, we have so many other great delays within the Helix. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope I covered that in a way that was enjoyable and helpful. Please like the video and share it with anybody who you think would get some use out of watching it. And also please subscribe to my channel, hit the little bell notification below to get notified when I put new content out. I'll be back really soon with some more. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Ciao for now.